here are 4 things in my mind that prevent childhood trauma survivors from hitting the success that they want to hit in life. Here are the 4. Number 1, we're going to discuss something called the suffering trap, where we have like a high tolerance for pain, but a low tolerance for discomfort, and that's a paradox. The second one is something I call perfectly incapable. When you're capable, but you're really disconnected from knowing just how capable you actually are. And the third one is, can you keep up the facade? If you do hit success, can you maintain that effort? That might be perhaps the core of this video. And the fourth and final one, super important, exploring how childhood trauma-related grief about not being seen by our family maybe prevents us from going after the success that we want to go after. And these 4 issues in my mind are essentially the ingredients to what we know as imposter syndrome. So please watch to the end of this short video to fully understand that it's not just a confidence issue. It's way more complex than that. And what do you want in terms of success? Like, really use this video as a placeholder or a place to dream a little bit without the intense inner monologue or inner narrative or fear about how you're not capable of success. Personal success for childhood trauma survivors is really going to be specific to you. Does that look like owning your own company one day? Does that look like getting out of debt? Or does that one just simply look like living more in calmness versus living in messy survival mode that I used to live in? While we might have different goals in success and the beliefs that hold us back, they are highly patternized and are kind of universally shared, like with those 4 things I just mentioned. The stuff that prevents a person from getting, say, their 3rd master's degree is going to be the same stuff that prevents someone from moving out of an abusive relationship into like an anxious roommate situation, where they both involve risk and security. To show you what I mean about those patterns, please comment on this video if you would agree with the following statement, maybe like a thumbs up or simply I agree. Success is for other people who are just better at functioning than I am, and most likely had a safer and more supportive emotional development in childhood. Don't take that as like a victim stance or a victim mindset or shame yourself. These are just kind of factual things that come along with childhood trauma. And those who don't have developmental delays actually don't struggle to hit their goals as much as maybe we do. There's just more facts, and there's not moral issues. However, our success is not about catching up with other people's status in the world or their ability, but our success is going to be to surpass our own stuff. And I talk about that in the part 2 to this video, where I talk about things like our peer relationships and feeling left behind in life. Here's what my life was like before childhood trauma treatment when it came to my concepts of success. An example is living in my own place without roommates or owning a home. That was for other people, maybe for people who didn't kind of grow up trashy like I did. Good executive functioning, like people who could focus, show up on time, get things done. That was for people who I thought were just smarter than me, people who weren't like an F-up like I was. And that's really what I thought of myself back then. Having a stable savings account instead of the soul-killing monthly bank, weekly bank overdraft fees that I would do. I had no concept of money. That was for other people who were better at that. Having a professional career that actually offered growth and purpose, also no. And most importantly, I completely lacked the internal security to take a risk. And to be blunt, I was more comfortable in my own dysfunction for those 4 reasons I mentioned earlier that we're going to unpack today. You might not present as visibly messy as I did in my early 20s before treatment. You might actually have a career completely dialed in, but you struggle with success when it comes to things like creativity, or better health, or finding your meaning and purpose in life. So today we're going to be looking at these hidden areas where childhood trauma actively sabotages your adult success. It has a lot to do with our beliefs rooted in that childhood trauma. And if you're new here, I'm Patrick Teahan. I'm an MSW. I'm a childhood trauma educator. If you have a hunch that your childhood gave you an internal story that success isn't for someone like you, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, comment on the video, and let's talk about it. Let's get into these 4 things. If you remember the first one, the suffering trap, high tolerance for pain, low tolerance for discomfort. The suffering trap is a paradox where survivors have a high tolerance for pain, like staying in a bad relationship, staying in a job that doesn't serve you, but low tolerance for new discomfort. That is the vulnerability required to make changes for success. We do have to think about what type of suffering we are trying to avoid. Is suffering for you about mistakes being too much or being potentially critiqued too much in a new environment or new situation? Is suffering that comes from adding discomfort to your schedule or your workload, like going into more debt, like if you're working and you have to go back to school, is that something that's like too much for you to add more things? Is suffering about the social element, like being in classes or having a new boss? Is that idea too much? Success requires emotional bandwidth and showing up kind of with a fuller tank of gas that some survivors just don't feel like they have or they don't have for whatever situation they're in. And when we're in a really bad way with our childhood trauma, if you relate to that, if you can think about like when you're at your worst with this stuff, our inner child tends to confuse discomfort with survival issues. You aren't being like lazy. You're actually conserving resources when you feel like you don't have many. When you're already struggling just to keep your head above water, taking a risk might feel like it will lead you into total emotional bankruptcy. Here's the stuck place with this one. Success is an uncomfortable investment, but for childhood trauma survivors, we have to power through that feeling on some level of the fear about rocking our own boat when you feel like you're barely rowing. And yes, these are just simply hard things to do. The way out of this one is being less vigilant about potential suffering or discomfort, while understanding that you're already in a lot of pain. You're already kind of feeling like you're not going anywhere. So outside of the paradox is some freedom within that. If this one resonates with you, leave a comment about what is the suffering that your inner child is trying to protect itself from, to just kind of name it and maybe put that in sort of the video somewhere or make a note to yourself. What is the suffering that you're trying to avoid? Comment or write it down to yourself. The second one is what I call perfectly incapable. This is really about the messaging and assumptions about us that sets you up to have barriers or sabotaging issues to your success goals. You've heard me say in other videos that my father would often tell me that I should work with my hands. He wasn't talking about brain surgery. He was referencing that I should be like a laborer in life. Nothing wrong with being a laborer. But that was reinforced additionally with my mother saying that I had more common street sense versus academic smartness. So there was really no smarty pants trajectory coming from both my parents, if that makes sense to you. So that was a brand, like a company has a branding. That was a brand that was handed to me. What was the brand that was either handed to you or the brand that your family lived in? Or you could just think about this as the role that you might have been placed in, like that example I just gave from my own childhood. Here are some other brands as examples, like the family of high achievers that state you're nothing if you're not going to be a doctor or you're not going to be a lawyer or entrepreneur or something like that. Or that family that loves to be miserable and encourages their children to not aim high so they don't have to be kind of like in competition with their kids, as dark as that sounds. Another is the parent that labels you as like the family hero or the family scapegoat or the valedictorian or the family loser. Those are all brands. Those are all roles. And I have yet to have a client when I was in practice that wasn't disconnected from how wonderfully capable they actually were in achieving that they actually were. That family brand stuff is a lie we have to work through. I've had clients working in incredibly complex office jobs and doctors and sort of academics and sort of folks who were immensely creative, but they felt like they couldn't get out of a menial job. That's what I mean about that stuff. They were disconnected from how good they actually were at things. Let me know if that resonates with you. You're not a narcissist for saying, I'm actually good at cooking or something like that. So before I started treatment, I didn't think I would ever get out of restaurant work or low-paying service-based jobs. That was the brand or the destiny that I needed a lot of help to get out of, outside help, and have someone believe in me, which was actually a therapist in my very early 20s, like I was 19. There is a barrier with this, an invisible ceiling. When I started low-paying service jobs, I actually thought I made it. when I was 19 years old. That's just how much of an imposter I was, and how little I thought about myself, and how little I imagined what the world could offer me. Translate that into your relationships. Childhood trauma survivors can be like, oh, thank God someone's willing to date me. That's like an invisible ceiling. Oh, thank God I'm just with somebody who tolerates me. That's very different than finding the partner that's like your match, or a wonderful sort of also healthy sort of person working on a path. So those two things are very different, if that makes sense. The stuck place with perfectly incapable is it ties into childhood trauma issues of things like dissociation and not having a strong sense of self. And again, most clients I have had were profoundly capable and dynamic, but they had no idea that they were so due to that poor sense of self and dissociation that is like a result of their childhood. And the way out of this one is to actually get some help from how others see you. We have to jumpstart our success and your sense of self by maybe a therapist or a close person next to you, but you really have to be open to that. It's vulnerable. The idea of seeking out a safe person about getting some help around what you're good at. So in some ways, that's where therapy is like sort of like a surrogate parent kind of a thing. As creepy as that sounds, that's kind of actually how it works. We actually get some mirroring from safe people. That's how it should go originally in childhood, but that doesn't happen. The third one is, can I keep up the facade? This one is really about the fear of what happens if you do get a foot in the door. You might sort of say stuff like, well, I crash out all the time. A win for me would be a one shot. Then I would get exhausted in maintaining a relationship or a job or a business or something like that. I just don't have the gas in the tank, kind of a thing. We sometimes feel that if we actually arrived at where we wanted, it might not last, kind of like success has a fragile feeling to it. Let me know if that resonates with you in a comment. Many survivors fear their success is made of a glass. One bad day or one shame spiral away and will just shatter the whole thing and you'll be exposed. So why even build the greenhouse, if that makes sense? And the stuck place here is about shame and not having a sense of normalcy of being human. Sometimes you can only really give 70%. But a wounded inner child believes anything under 150% means to be a liar and a thief and an imposter. So the way out of this one is trying to embrace the idea that most people struggle to show up. You know what I mean? Like I can struggle to show up to do these videos. It's kind of like a normal part of our work. A lot of the times we don't really want to do it, but then we feel better afterwards. So the more you do show up, the more tolerable showing up becomes. Also, you might be a mess inside at work like I was, but no one has to know. If you made it through your shift, you're a miracle. They hired you for a reason, so you kind of have to build upon that success. This one is about another common paradox. A wounded inner child can ask, what is the point of success, like going to my graduation, if no one is there to celebrate with me and reflect upon the journey that I just went through? Many of us, estranged from family or not, have felt anonymous even when we're around family. So we are often trying to still kind of get a good job kid from a parent who is either apathetic or incapable of that. Is any of you out there ever had your family not at your wedding due to, say, family abuse or family estrangement or from their apathy? That is such a huge milestone in our lives, but can you imagine the feelings and the meaning and the purpose when someone doesn't have a family to witness and share it with? And I'm not sort of saying this from a narcissistic kind of a thing. Like, I think whether we're 5 years old or 25 years old, it's healthy to sort of want family in our lives to sort of see you and recognize and support, and you do that for them and vice versa. It's just kind of a basic human thing. It's how it works. This one is really about having a grief anchor. We can ask why bother, since the pain of not having success or my efforts being so invisible, see how that might keep you in place like an anchor keeps a boat in place, where you might not take the risk to go anywhere new. This is sad, but if you want to break a child's heart, never show up to their school performance or their graduations. It's profoundly important to little humans for healthy development to be kind of cherished and celebrated, because it's that family container that tells us like, oh my God, I'm a person in the world and I'm doing good things. And it's not good to not sort of have that from a family. So the stuck place here is assuming that you need a loving audience to share your work with instead of success being about your happiness and comfort and growth. The way out of this is tricky, is that grief work for me came with being in a childhood trauma group, processing my family of origin trauma for like 3 to 4 years. Grief work is a lot like draining a well of stuff that happened to us and family dynamics and processing all that. But we're doing that not just in a vacuum. We're doing that with like witnesses around us, like in, say, a group or with a therapist. And forgive me, I understand that therapy is not available to a lot of you. I know it's very expensive, but I still kind of have to spell out like how I got here. There's really kind of no way kind of around that. So please don't take that as criticism or me not understanding it's not available to everybody. So all 4 of those issues relates to imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome isn't just feeling like a fraud. For the childhood trauma survivor, it's an intersection of these 4 ingredients. There are others, yes. And you might feel like a fraud because you're breaking the silent family rules that came from your family around success, is to be kind of in a new territory with a new branding. That's what's going to get us out of there. And you might feel like a fraud because you think the effort to show up feels unsustainable, which probably isn't true as well. And you might feel like a fraud because you assume the pain of not being seen in success is too much or doesn't make it worth it at all, which is also a lie. So here are some final thoughts. I hope that this video was helpful to you. My main message to you in this is whatever your inner child believes about success is most likely an old lie, an old script, and lack of encouragement that everyone needs to be able to hit some success. I got it from outside my family. And imposter syndrome, we tend to think about it as a confidence issue when it's more about a connection issue. Mirroring, connection, celebrating, people believing in ourselves, sense of self. We weren't connected to our family nor ourselves, therefore we weren't connected to our capabilities. And success is very much out there for you. It took me a long time. And I used to watch the world kind of like pass me by, and I felt like I wasn't invited to the opportunity train that other people were afforded. That was another lie, because there was actually a lot of opportunity for me. I just had to sort of really get some help, you know. There is a follow-up to this video as a masterclass. In that video, which is hosted over on my Circle platform, I get into 2 other examples of imposter syndrome, as well as going into a series of in-depth journal-based work and resources and suggestions on overcoming this stuck place around success. These videos are profoundly affordable, they are ad-free, and they come with a bigger sense of community. You can find the masterclass right up here in this bubble over here. And please leave a comment. I would love to hear what stood out for you in this video, what might be a stuck place for you. If you relate to anything, like what is the discomfort that you might be avoiding, but you're also in pain. Please know that the toxic family sets us up to be stuck for very specific reasons, like I mentioned here. Thank you so much for staying with me. Please like, please subscribe, share the video if you found it helpful. And as always, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. And may you be joyous. And I will see you next time.